and news breaks with the same speed.
Sometimes you find the news, and sometimes the news finds you.
All stations can keep up. At Adaba FM, we'll not only give you news at the speed of nanosecond, but we'll also break it down with up-to-date analysis, informed opinions, and distinct professionalism. That's why you love us. Adaba 88.9 FM, your go-to station.
It's midday. Good afternoon. I'm Adeola Adekunle with Global News. In the news, Inec budgets 3 billion naira to fight electoral cases. Kenya proposes bill to restrict protests. French Prime Minister to visit trade unions over pension reform crisis.
This is the news.
The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, says it has budgeted over 3 billion naira to defend the results of the February 25 presidential and National Assembly elections and the March 18 governorship and state assembly polls. Report has it that several candidates who lost in the elections have filed petitions at the presidential and state election petition tribunals to challenge the outcome of the polls. So far, over 100 election petitions have been filed by aggrieved candidates and their parties across the country. The presidential candidates of PDP, Atiku Abubakar, the Labour Party, Peter Obi, the Action Alliance, Solomon Okangboan, Allied People's Movement, Chichi Ojei, have also filed petitions for the nullification of the presidential election results. Also, election petition tribunals in about 12 states have equally received petitions from National Assembly candidates who are not satisfied with the results of the just concluded elections. Kenya's riot police are on the streets of the capital, Nairobi, in a bid to prevent protests called by the opposition over the high cost of living and alleged election malpractices. There is also heavy police presence in Kibera and Mathare, the largest informal settlements in the city where protesters are being blocked from moving into the city center. Report says a car carrying local journalists in Kibera was attacked by a crowd and its occupants robbed at knife point. Shops have been closed in downtown Nairobi as business owners fear looting. In the western city of Kisumu, an opposition stronghold tear gas has been fired to disperse crowds of protesters who were being led by their local governor. Police have said they will take pictures of protesters and file charges against them for participating in illegal protests. Earlier, Kenya Railways Corporation had suspended all its commuter train operations in the capital, Nairobi, ahead of today's anti-government protest called by opposition leader Raila Odinga. In the meantime, Kenya's Interior Ministry is proposing changes to security laws that will make it more difficult for people to hold protests. The Constitution gives Kenyans the right to assemble, demonstrate and picket, but the participants must be peaceful and unarmed. Protests held last week in opposition strongholds left one university student dead after police used tear gas and live ammunition to disperse crowds. The changes proposed by the ministry seeks to limit the number of people holding protests at any particular occasion and makes protesters pay the cost of cleaning up. Protesters must also seek consent from the people affected by the protest, while the demonstrators will also be liable for paying damages to those harmed by their activities. Though the proposed changes have been criticized by some as an affront to the foundations of an open and democratic society and as a law that contravenes the Constitution. Now, Uganda authorities have closed the boarding section of a primary school in the central Mumbende region after 7 schoolboys reported to have been sexually abused by school's caretaker. Report has it that the caretaker pleaded guilty to the charges in court last week and is waiting for sentencing. State Minister for Primary Education Joyce Moriko Kadusu said congestion in the school had provided fertile ground for the abuse of learners. Some 350 boarding pupils at the school were sleeping on triple-deck beds in 5 small rooms, the Daily Monitor website reports. She also faulted local education officials for not inspecting the schools. Schools in Uganda require a government license to operate boarding sections. The Kodako militia group has executed 17 people captured in the Jogo territory in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The victims were passengers aboard 4 vehicles heading to Mungwalu in Ituri province. Report has it that they were taken hostage after 3 Kodako members were killed in a clash with a rival militia. The Kodako group claims to protect the Lendu farming community in Ituri, and it is one of myriad armed groups operating in the region. Military and civilian political leaders in Sudan have begun talks in Khartoum on bringing the government back to militia, the RSF, under the control of the army. Placing the military under civilian authority are the key demands of the civilian groups, which helped overthrow President Omar al-Bashir in 2019. The talks are part of an agreement signed in December, which is meant to pave the way for a return to democratic rule and due to be adopted formally in less than 2 weeks. The army chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, who seized power in a coup 2 years ago, said he wanted to put an end to the armed forces supporting dictatorial governments in Sudan. You're on to Global News from Adaba 88.9 FM, accurate transmitting from Ilaramokin. After the break, French Prime Minister to visit trade unions over pension reform crisis. Details in the second part of the bulletin. Join us again.
The news on Adaba 88.9 FM.
Glad to have you back for news update and live streaming. Visit our website www.adaba889.fm or download Adaba FM app on Google Play Store. You can be part of us on our social media platforms www.facebook.com/AdabaFM88.9 on Facebook, at Adaba889FM on Instagram and Twitter, and Adaba FM TV on YouTube. You can provide us information via email newsroom@adaba889.fm. Until the rest of the bulletin, French Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne is expected to meet with opposition leaders and trade unions after weeks of protest against pension reforms. Burns made this statement as demonstrations against the pension plan resulted into violence after the government pushed the legislation through without the final parliamentary vote. Burn will meet with political party leaders and also aims to restart dialogue with unions over labor issues. The Prime Minister added that the meetings with opposition and union leaders will take place in the week starting from April the 3rd. And now the head of Myanmar's military government, Min Aung, has pledged to deal decisively with acts of terror caused by armed resistance groups. Report says that the conflict has killed tens of thousands of people and more than 1 million have been displaced. In a speech at the annual Armed Services Parade in capital, Min Aung also accused countries critical of his regime's human rights record of being terror supporters. He further stressed that the Myanmar armed forces won't stop fighting those opposing their rule at every cost. Israel's President Isaac Herzog has called on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the ruling coalition to halt its divisive judicial changes plan for the sake of the unity of the people of Israel. The appeal by the head of state comes after a dramatic night of protest across Israel, which underlines the alarm that the proposals have caused. Reports are of it that tens of thousands of protesters took to the streets in cities across Israel in a spontaneous outburst of anger after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu abruptly fired his defense minister for challenging his judicial overhaul plan. Sports. Super Eagles head coach Jose Pesaro has said his team must avoid the same mistakes which led to their defeat against the Jottas of Guinea-Bissau last Friday. The three-time African champions fell to a shocking 1-0 defeat to Guinea-Bissau at the Mashoud Abiola Stadium, Abuja on Friday. Pesaro said that his team must be clinical this time around if they want to come out victorious. Super Eagles will play the second leg against Guinea-Bissau today by 5 p.m. And now to end global news, a recap of our top stories. We told you that the Independent National Electoral Commission says it has budgeted over 30 billion naira to defend the results of the February 25 Presidential and National Assembly election and the March 18 governorship and state assembly polls. Kenya's Interior Ministry is proposing changes to security laws that will make it more difficult for people to hold protests. And we told you that French Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne is expected to meet with opposition leaders and trade unions after weeks of protest against pension reforms. That's Global News. It was edited by Patience Ibe. Adeola Adekunle. Thank you for listening. Good afternoon.